A federal judge in Tennessee has blocked the Biden administration from enforcing its Title IX guidance that allows biological males who transition to female to compete against women. The new ruling affects 20 states where the attorney generals sued the federal government over the guidance. CBN's Heather Sells spoke about this case with Christina as a senior counsel, senior counsel with the Alliance Defending Freedom.
You regularly advocate for female athletes, and in this case, for 3 public school female athletes in Arkansas and for athletes at schools in the Association of Christian Schools International. What has been the concern for female athletes in public and private schools with this Biden administration guidance?
Well, there are many concerns with the guidance, but one of the major concerns is the fact that the Biden administration would open women and girls sports teams to biological males. And that, frankly, could spell the beginning of the end of women's sports. We know that young women are generally don't have a real opportunity for a fair and level playing field if they're forced to compete against a male who has a clear athletic advantage over them. So if we want a future where young women get to not just compete, but be on the podium to compete for college scholarship opportunities, and yes, to pursue their future educational opportunities as well, then we have to protect the integrity of women's sports. And that means ensuring that girls get to compete against other biological females.
This ruling is interesting because it's a win, but it's a win for female athletes in just the 20 states where the attorney general sued the federal government. So when we think about this fall, are there different rules for schools across the country depending on which state they're in?
Well, as you mentioned, the ruling from this federal court only applies to the 20 states that sued the Biden administration over its new notice and interpretation. It does put states in the other 20 states into a bit of a quandary, wondering whether or not they should comply with Title IX as written, as it was initially designed to provide equal educational and athletic opportunities for young women, or whether the Biden administration will try to enforce its reinterpretation of Title IX in these other 20 states. So the blame really lies with the Biden administration in trying to undo nearly 50 years of federal law and educational and athletic opportunities for young women. So the Biden administration really has put these other schools in these other 20 states in a quandary.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the ruling in particular because it pushed back on how the Biden administration was interpreting a Supreme Court decision, the 2020 Bostock decision. How did this federal judge, in essence, correct the Biden administration?
Well, the federal court made really clear that the Biden administration had taken Bostock too far. The Supreme Court in the Bostock decision made clear that its ruling was limited to the federal employment context. And it specifically left for another day other questions related to locker rooms or shower facilities, and yes, athletics as well. And we all know that Title IX was designed to provide educational and athletic opportunities for young women, so completely different than federal employment law. And I think the federal court was correct to push back on the Biden administration's wrongful expansion of the Bostock decision.
All right. And so we basically now have, in effect, different rules for schools depending on which state they're in or how they choose to proceed at this point. How do you see this ultimately resolving, or is this a new normal where schools treat female athletes differently depending on their state?
Well, ultimately, I do think the question will reach the United States Supreme Court. And ultimately, I'm optimistic that the Supreme Court will look at the original purpose and text of Title IX and recognize that the whole point of this law was to provide opportunities for young women. And it protects everyone on the same basis, which is on the basis of their biological sex. And if we, again, want a future where young women can showcase their talents and participate fairly and compete in athletics, then we have to protect the women's sports category.
A lot at stake. Christiana Kiefer with Alliance Defending Freedom, thanks for your time.
Thank you.